Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of Inclusive Plug powered by RECONOMY. I'm Sabin.
And I'm Anna, and for this episode, we're diving into something quite fashionable and textilish, literally, and we'll be talking about textile fashion and the trade bridge that's forming between Eastern Europe and the Nordics.
Exactly. Helvetas, through RECONOMY in collaboration with the National Board of Trade Sweden, recently supported a market orientation mission to Sweden, where companies from the Eastern Partnership countries explored opportunities, trends, partnerships in the Nordic fashion market.
Yes, and we have two great guests joining us, one representing the Swedish side of the story, Linda Rydén, project manager at the National Board of Trade Sweden, Open Trade Gate Sweden, and the one from an enterprise that was part of the mission, Daria Kharenkova, head of communication at TK Style based in Ukraine.
Let's start by setting the scene. What was the main idea behind organizing this mission, Linda? What were you hoping to achieve by really bringing these enterprises to Sweden?
Sure, yeah. I would say the main goal of pretty much all the projects that we do I work at a function called Open Trade Gate Sweden within the National Board of Trade. And pretty much all of our projects that we work with, we work to enable companies to export to the EU and specifically to the Swedish market. So in this project, it's a group of companies who were currently not exporting to Sweden. And most of the companies didn't know so much about the Swedish buyers and the requirements and demands in the market. So I would say the main goal of this mission was to give the companies a chance to get to know the market and to introduce them to a variety of different stakeholders in the textile and apparel sector in Sweden, as well as to work practically with some of the sustainability requirements that we see that are important for Swedish buyers. Yeah.
And from your side, Daria, what made you say yes? Why did your company feel this was the right time to explore the Swedish or broader Nordic markets?
Of course. So Textile is a manufacturer from Ukraine, and we joined the mission because Sweden represents the forward thinking of the market, and there is much in tune with our company philosophy, I would say, and especially when it comes to sustainability, product quality, and conscious consumption. And I feel like it's also for us was because it's a new market. It was a great opportunity to better understand local buyer expectations and explore a potential partnership in a structured way, but also to understand behind the scenes and on site, because we are pretty much presented in France and in Germany, but not in Nordic. So it was a new opportunity for the market expansion for us.
And we hear a lot about how consumers in Sweden are very conscious, like ethics, sustainability, circularity. So maybe to start with you, Linda, can you walk us through what Swedish buyers are actually looking for in textile import today?
Sure. Yeah, and I can say that it's probably one of the most common questions that I get, and it is very difficult to answer in a short way, but I will try. It depends on the size and the profile of the buyer, so it's a little bit hard to say in general. If we talk about large players, they do typically look for the traditional things like reliable, efficient production, larger volumes. But if we look at the smaller brands and designers, they are looking for flexibility. Sometimes smaller MOQs can be important. Things like being able to co-design in a smart way and really being a partner with the Swedish brand. I would say that's often more important than the exact price per item, although cost will of course play a role. And if we talk about end consumers, when we look at brands, then for companies that want to sell their own brands in the Swedish market, I would say there's a range. Of course, we also have extremely low cost driven consumer segment that would buy from, Temu or Shein. but we also have very sustainability conscious consumers looking for things like remake, recycled content, or other sustainable materials or ways of producing more on demand and lower quantities. So there is the range, but we definitely have that segment as well, I would say.
And Daria, how does that compare with what you're used to in your home market?
I would say that in general, for us, it was a big insight in terms of how Swedish stakeholders go in integrated sustainability, not just in sourcing, but also across entire business model, I would say. And there was, for us, it was news that, for instance, there's a strong demand for data-driven transparency, and also there are like systems that track environmental impact across the whole value chain. There is more into integration of digital product passport, DPP. And I think the big eye-opener for us was the openness of Swedish market to innovation and collaboration from the eastern part of Europe, and especially in terms of circularity, upcycling, or like repair services. And I would say compared to Ukraine, there is more stability in terms of sustainability factor, because in Ukraine there are lots of also brands that integrate in this, but there is no such requirements from the government. And that was like an eye-opener for us, that there is like a lot of governmental institutions that support and also integrate this like best practices for sustainability. And yeah.
Okay, I will continue the question to you, Daria. Were there any particular moments, like during the mission, that really opened your eyes? Kind of something about buyer expectations. You talked like in general, but were there something specific, or maybe how circular business models are seen in Sweden, or something like this? What do you think? Were there this kind of moments?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, there's that Swedish business integrated their sustainability in all tiers, try to integrate it, and also it was just eye-opener, the transparency, I would say, behind all the brands that we talked with, for instance, or yeah, I would say, like, as we are presented a lot in the French market, it wasn't like such a big news for us in terms of, because we are fully integrated in the production and in the end consumers. Yeah, I think like there is this trend for the lower MOQs in general within the markets. I would say the biggest, maybe, yeah, I'm thinking that the biggest eye-opener for me personally and for the company was that how like secondhand working in their Sweden, because I knew the news that Vinted is like the first platform in France, you know, and there was like this this kind of issue that Sweden faced with their like secondhand is not on demand. And that was kind of surprising to hear in general, because you can see this trend among their countries that secondhand is like the biggest go-to, and it wasn't that popular in Sweden. And there is like this problem that Sweden faced, I would say. But yeah, in general, it was just nice to hear this transparency and sustainability practices behind.
And from your perspective, Linda, how do you see the role of circularity and transparency evolving in the textile value chains in Sweden in the years ahead?
Yeah, so I think Daria's mentioned a few spot-on things. We see a lot of upcoming legislation that's coming from the EU mainly, but there's some national ones as well. But they will change the landscape a little bit and the conditions for the producers. The second-hand market has grown enormously in the last decade, and I think it will continue. I know that some of the people we met during the trip, they were also commenting on, like, as you mentioned, the second-hand demand is not enough for what's available. So there is so many garments that's being thrown out that could be used. So that sort of segues me into the next thing that I think is important going forward, and that is the remake segment and the upcycling segment that I hope and think will increase. Today it's still quite expensive, it's quite rare. And one specific development I can mention in connection to transparency is that, as Daria also mentioned, in 2027 all textile goods sold in the EU will have to have a digital product passport. So I really foresee that the demands for transparency and traceability, they will really grow quickly, and increasingly it will go further down in the tiers. So I think those are the big changes that we'll see in the very near future.
And one last question to Daria. So you had kind of taste of the Swedish market. So what kind of opportunities do you see there? Kind of partnerships, export, maybe you're going to make product redesign, or how do you see these opportunities from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. As I already mentioned, in terms of small batches and lower MOQs, from their cotton make production from Ukraine, I see the perspective that we have a clear opportunities in partnering with Swedish brands that are looking for reliable, agile production partners with a strong quality control and ethics standards. And many buyers are seeking for like transparency and traceability, not just in the materials, but also in the working condition and the production process. And I feel like that pretty much aligns with our strengths. And as we are already producing small batches and small on-demand production models, we see like clear opportunity there in terms of real potential long-term collaboration with where flexibility, accountability, and sustainability is the key metrics, I would say.
Oh. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your thoughts, insights, and it's clear that creating sustainable trade bridge is not just possible, but actually this is happening. So thank you very much for your participation.
And for everyone watching, thank you for joining us. Follow us for more stories and where green inclusive growth becomes reality.